Hi, welcome to Virtually Sunday. My name is Tony Pickler. Things are sometimes are not as they appear. I think of the movie from my childhood called Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, filmed in 1971. Most of you know the story, I'm sure, but Willy Wonka is a mysterious man who owns a chocolate factory. And no one has seen him in years because he's kind of closed off the factory and himself to the outside world. He is concerned about people stealing his recipes for candy. One of the mysterious men in the film actually says, no one ever goes in and no one ever comes out of that factory. But one day, Willy Wonka decides to hold a contest to meet some people and to have them tour the factory. 5 people are going to win the tour by getting a golden ticket that's held in Wonka bars, chocolate bars. Well, one of those children is named Charlie, and Charlie's a very poor child. He lives with his mom, who's a widow, but also lives with his grandparents, who are all bedridden and have been for a number of years. And they live in a one-room dwelling that looks very, very poor in the film. Well, as the film goes on, 4 wealthy children from around the world win the golden tickets in the Wonka bars. And Charlie finds the 5th and last ticket. And he chooses his Grandpa Joe to go on the tour of the factory as his guest. Well, on that Saturday of the tour, Willy Wonka comes out of the factory with a cane and looking like a really old man, walking slowly, hunched over. But like I said, not everything is as it appears. And so he does a cartwheel and greets his guests as he comes towards the gate and unlocks it for the children and their chaperones to come in. And the factory is not as it appears either. From the outside, it looks like an old, broken down factory. But once inside, they realize there's a river of chocolate. There's edible trees and other plants. And in fact, just about everything in the factory is made of candy and can be eaten. And then there's these little people named Oompa Loompas who actually work there and make the candy for Willy Wonka. So things are not as they appear. Well, Charlie's the only child to make it through the tour with honesty and integrity. And at the very end, Willy Wonka gives him the factory as a gift for this honesty. The contest was actually not just to meet people and to give a tour, but the contest was actually to find a successor who is worthy of making candy in the Willy Wonka chocolate factory. Things are not as they sometimes appear. In our first reading from the prophet Isaiah on Sunday, we have an image of the suffering servant. Incidentally, it's the same reading that we hear every Good Friday. The Messiah will be a lowly servant, a victim, someone on the margins. Isaiah writes, I gave my back to those who beat me, my cheeks to those who plucked my beard. My face I did not shield from buffets and spitting. This isn't the glorious life of a king or one in power. This is the life of a suffering servant. Things are not as they sometimes appear. Just as a bit of a commercial break, the second reading is from the letter of St. James. And as you probably know, the second reading doesn't always connect with the first reading nor the gospel. And this is the case here this coming Sunday. But I take this commercial break for Dorothy Day, as she is the spirit behind Whatsoever You Do Incorporated. And she used, and this house of hospitality that I sit in right now. She used a saying from this reading often, if a brother or sister has nothing to wear, and has no food for the day, and one of you says to them, go in peace, keep warm and eat well, but you do not give them the necessities of the body, what good is it? Dorothy often used to say, if your brother or sister comes to your door, you feed them. You don't say, go thou be filled. That's what we attempt to do here as Whatsoever You Do Incorporated, to feed our brothers and sisters with food, but even more importantly, to feed our brothers and sisters and ourselves with relationship. So now back to the main event. In the gospel, we have the story from Mark's gospel about Jesus asking who people are identifying him as. This happens to be, by the way, in the 8th chapter of a 16-chapter book. So it's right in the middle, pivotal to the entire Mark story. The disciples give various answers. They say, well, some people are saying you're John the Baptist. Other people are saying Moses. Some people are saying Elijah. But Jesus doesn't want other people's answers. Jesus wants their answer to the question. So Peter is the one who comes up with the right answer, the correct answer. He says, "You are the Messiah, the anointed one of God." Wow, Peter doesn't always get the right answer, it seems, in the Gospels. But on that day, he gets an A for the day. But things are not as they appear all the time. Jesus' view of what being the Messiah and Peter's version of this are two very different things. For Peter, the Messiah will save Israel from Roman occupation. The Messiah will bring back to glory that Israel had experienced under David and under King Solomon. And perhaps the Messiah would be a military hero if necessary. A leader for Peter is one who leads with power and dominion. But for Jesus, the Messiah will be the suffering servant, the person who washes feet, and the person who is a servant for all. For Jesus, that's what leadership looks like. If you want to pass the test, Jesus says, fulfill what Matthew 25 calls us to do. Feed the hungry, give drink to the thirsty, visit the imprisoned and the sick, and welcome the stranger. What appeared to be the way of a leader should be, under Peter's viewpoint, is not what Jesus had in mind. But what about us today? What kind of person do you see as being Christ-like and being a leader? Is it a person with a nice big home? A person with a great, big, nice car? Is it a person with a large paycheck? Or does the person live on the margins? Is the person who's Christ-like the one who serves the neighbor in need, or the person who suffers? The prosperity gospel would say it's the first person. The person with the most is the person most blessed by God. The person who suffers must have done something wrong in the eyes of God. But things are not as they always appear. The first shall be last, and the last shall be first, Jesus says. It's easier for a camel to get through the eye of a needle than for a rich person to inherit the kingdom of heaven, Jesus says. And he says, I came to serve, not to be served. So what kind of leader are we looking for? What does the kingdom of heaven look like for us? As we know from Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, things are not always as they appear. And as the refrain from the song Pure Imagination that comes from that movie states, if you want to view paradise, simply look around and view it. Anything you want to do, do it. You want to change the world? There's nothing to it. Let's get started. Peace be with you.